While I was waiting for her to come over one night, I made a list of objects that I had moved with my hands that day. The first object I moved was the sheet that covered me in bed when I woke up. The sixth object I moved was a box of baking soda that I left on a shelf in my bathroom to absorb odor. I moved the baking soda to the side so I could reach the seventh item I moved, an unopened box that contained the eighth item, a new tube of toothpaste. The 85th item I moved was a jar that I dropped. I stopped writing the list at 85 and thought about the jar for a while instead. The jar had been on my desk, filled with pens. The pens had fallen onto the tile floor. Chief heard the sound of pens falling and yelled, "Why are pens falling?" But this isn't about the pens. This is about the jar. The jar sat on my desk, but it contained pens for the entire office. In that sense, it was not my jar, although it had been once. The jar contained jam when I bought it from a vendor at the festival. I ate much of the jam the next morning in my hotel. I ate the remainder of the jam in the spring, except for a small portion that I washed out when I washed out the jar. I used the jar as a vase to hold a few flowers. Pale roses. She took photos of the flowers that I'd put in the jar that I'd later drop. She took the jar outside and took photos of the jar and the flowers that were in the jar. The jar held water, and in the water stood roses. The water was temperate, and the roses were pale. She took photos of the jar, and I dropped the jar. She used pencils instead of pens, and I dropped the jar. The Vice-Chancellor sees the stars waving on his television, and will never understand that they are not waving at him. Something is going to happen in 34 days.